Hey, we got a pretty quiet sun here, so we'll tell you all about it on the Daily Space Weather Show and bring you some spectacular footage regardless of how boring the solar activity might be at the moment. As time runs out on your soul's ability to tread water in the river Styx. These are the past 24 hours from the SDO. Yeah, the Solar Dynamics Observatory. What's that? You want a closer view of the 171 angstroms running difference imagery and the 304 angstroms imagery? Well, there you go. There are both together. You're welcome, to quote Nick Burns, the company's computer guy. So that's what's going on. Here come sunspots. There you go. That's yesterday plus today, December 27th and 28th to date. 12/27 and 12/28 to date. And there is the magnetogram as well. As time runs out rapidly, the end is near. And let's see what's erupting in terms of volcanoes. As the end of the Earth's mantle is near, the volcanic caldera. So there is some GPS ground inflation happening there at Svartsengi. Is that what it is? Seriously? It's in the region of Svartsengi. Anyway, some ground is inflating there. Reykjanes Peninsula, also some seismic events happening there. So magma moving around. Will there be another eruption? Let us know in the comments what you think. Suwanosejima is also erupting, producing a 6,000-foot ash plume. Ibu, a 7,000-foot ash plume. Luotobi, 9,000-foot ash plume as it explodes like Ibu. Flight level 090 over Luotobe. Semeru, also volcanic ash reported there. Flight level 100 over Dacono as it explodes. Popocatépetl exploding. Flight level 200 over central Mexico. Santiaguito mildly exploding. Also an extrusive explosive eruption continues there as new real estate gets created. Fuego volcanic emissions continue. Nevado del Ruiz exploding, flight level 240, 24,000-foot ash plume. Sangay exploding, flight level 200. Not sure about Revenador, unable to detect Sabancaya. Let's move on to seismic activity. Here are the past 90 days in convenient bar graph form, courtesy of, once again, volcanodiscovery.com. So there was a large quake over the past 24 hours. It was this 6.5 near the Kamchatka Peninsula this morning, near eastern Siberia. There is the location of that. Also, actually, really closer to Japan in a lot of ways there. I'm not sure if those islands are Russian or Japanese, but there's the location of that 6.5 magnitude quake. It was at 23 kilometers estimated depth and at 9:15 Universal Time this morning. Before that, there were some additional quakes there of a 5 or greater magnitude, like this 5.1 in Indonesia, this 5.2 at the Reykjanes Ridge, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, and this 5.2 at the Philippines, all happening earlier than that this morning. So quite an active morning for 5 and greater magnitude quakes. Also a 5.8 at the Pacific Antarctic Ridge. That 5.8 only 2 minutes before the 6.5 magnitude quake off the coast of Siberia. And then many aftershocks occurring there, like this 5.0. And then a 5.1 near the Shetland Islands, near the northernmost tip of Antarctica. Just the tip. Philippines also had a 5.0 at 15:48 Universal Time this afternoon. And that is where the quake coverage ends and the solar coverage returns. So next is the 10.7 centimeter radial flux, which is now at 146, I believe it is. 146 is what I'll say is the radial flux. And if I'm wrong, well, you can attempt to cast my soul into an ever-deepening and darkening abyss of doom, destruction, and doggy chew toys that are already chewed into ribbons. Anyway, there is the 1-year graph of the radial flux depicted by that black line. The red line is the sunspot number. The blue line is the Potsdam AP index. Next, space weather enthusiast dashboard here. We never got a geomagnetic storm last night, not even geomagnetic unrest. That CME might have missed entirely, so coronal mass ejection missed there by NOAA. I don't think there was nothing resembling a geomagnetic storm in the past 24 hours. Next, the past 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from space. And what happened? Something happened. Here you go, the last 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from space, our Geospace Magnetosphere movie. Bring me more pizza, wench! More pizza, or it's a beating! Next, our ground magnetic perturbations map. Earth's geospace from the ground level, showing magnetic flux density changes to Earth's B field for the past 4 hours. Our ground magnetic perturbations map is what we're currently showing. Next, the KP index, an average of global geomagnetism, is at KP 0.33. So very calm conditions. Again, no geomagnetic storm occurred late last night or early this morning, as NOAA forecasted. It was a complete miss, it looks like, according to the KP index. Let's look at solar wind, and the ACE is missing a lot of data, so let's skip it and move to the Discover. Current conditions showing up there at about 6 protons per cubic centimeter for the solar wind density. Solar wind velocity here is slightly elevated at about 486 kilometers per second. GOES magnetometers are smooth, as no geomagnetic storms have struck. And if you're wondering where the GOES 16 and the GOES 18 are located, they are located in geosynchronous near equatorial orbits. Next is our top view ecliptic plane field plot. This data is derived from 51 ground-based magnetometers, as well as magnetometers on stereo B. That's stereo B right there. And then you've got stereo A right over here. And there it is. Earth is in a South Pole magnetic heliosphere sector. Here's our line of sight ecliptic plane field plot. South Pole sector expected to remain here. We do have one active region rising near the solar equator in the east. We'll get to it here momentarily. First, the line of sight field plot. That's a lot of things at once. The solar B field, the photosphere magnetism, and the polar fields in green and red for north and south, respectively. Here's our line of sight coronal hole plot. To close out our Gong 2 data section, looking at the sun's magnetic parameters in great detail, we'll move to our SDO imagery for coronal holes. I like 211 angstroms. And there's a well-defined transequatorial coronal hole rolling in there. And it looks a little bit like the Grim Reaper scythe, doesn't it? Check it out. Just imagine this. It's like the Grim Reaper is upside down. There's the handle. And then the Grim Reaper would stand right under here. He'd be standing upside down. I'll just draw a wraith. There you go. There's a wraith. Ooh, like a spooky Pac-Man ghost. Oh, look out, folks. Oh, my God. It's a coronal hole scythe, not to be confused with a sickle, featured on the communist flag. I understand the popularity of this flag in 2023. Next, moving to sunspots. And the sunspot number has come up a little bit here, just over 100. That's the data from ROB, the Royal Observatory of Belgium. Here's our flare probability monitor and scoreboard. Likelihood of large flares not that high, although we have an increased probability on the eastern limb now, since we have seen at least one C-class flare over there. Still, the most likely place to see a large flare is on the western limb, where we have this grouping of sunspots like 3526 and 3530. Here come sunspots from SDO. That's the SDO continuum. And we have some modest growth of this group, and several sunspots approaching their setting mode, which is increasing their likelihood to produce large flares. Besides that, not a lot of evolution of those sunspot groups. Let's move to energetic particles and solar flares. No spikes for energetic particles. The GOES proton flux remains at base flux levels. X-ray flux here quite low, only C-class intensifications there. The largest flare occurred just an hour or two ago, a couple of hours ago at 2050 Universal Time. It was only a C2 class intensification, so quite low levels of activity. And let's take a look at the sun here in 94 angstroms, SDO. Shout out to the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, one of the organizations who built the SDO. And you see that flare right at the end on the eastern limb, which would be screen left. So that in itself raises the probability of large flares, indicating there probably is a sunspot behind that eastern limb, just north of the equator there. Here's 131 angstroms as well. Don't mind us, we just bring the most detailed solar imagery and most comprehensive daily space weather in the known universe. If you haven't found the channel, we aren't surprised. Anyway, here come some additional bits of content. This is our star chart. We always like to know what's going on overhead, so we show our viewers, visually speaking. Of course, it's going to be different on your location on the planet, but that's what's going on over Allentown, zip code 18106. And of course, I will not divulge if that's my location. However, we are in Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. That much I will tell you. We've got Jupiter and Saturn overhead right now. And let's move on to a solar system forecast. So we'll show you where things are today, which is, yeah. Then we'll move things forward 7 days. Like this. That's where things will be on January 4th. Next year, yeah, is where things will be located. Next, our astronomy photo of the day. And this is creating some consonants. Yeah, they've created some consonants. Of course, they've got great writers at NASA, of course. It's a Geminid and Jupiter. Also, the Pleiades and Hyades clusters are visible in that imagery. There's the full view. Looking a little like Luke's lightsaber from Jedi. Wouldn't all you Star Wars fan types agree? Yes, yes. Oh, yes, Star Wars. I hate Star Wars, if you're wondering. I hate Star Wars. Please erase all Star Wars from existence. The most played out franchise in my lifetime. Continuing right along to coronal mass ejections. Now that I've created a bit of a, lots of people are going to be like, but Baby Yoda and Jar Jar Binks are going to have kids together. It's going to be so hot. It's going to be a Star Wars, adult film. What do you think, folks? I've got storyboards to create featuring Baby Yoda growing up to fall in love with Jar Jar Binks. What do you think? Wouldn't that be fun? Anyway, here are yesterday's coronal mass ejections. That's 101 frames from yesterday. See yesterday's daily space weather video for significant analysis of this. Here are today's frames, an additional 85 from today, December 28th. See today's daily space weather video for analysis of those, mostly, now that we've moved into our 7 p.m. Eastern time slot. To quote McDonald's, I'm loving it. That was my impression of Justin Timberlake singing, I'm loving it. I'm loving it. That was the other octave. Anyway, here are CMEs from LASCO C2 and C3. And it's been pretty mild as far as coronal mass ejections. I don't see indications that there are any earthly directed ones, so let's switch to our own 24-hour custom videos. And yeah, those don't look earthly directed to me. If you disagree, make sure you let us know in the comments. Especially if we've made you really mad. Yes, we're trying to sell you quarter pounders with cheese, folks. So make sure you get really mad at our corporate endorsements because we're such a corporate channel, right? Anyway, those are 24-hour videos. SDO 304 angstroms, the LASCO C3 in blue, and the LASCO C2 coronagraph in red. Part of the SOHO spacecraft. The SOHO mission, if you will. Now here we've zoomed in and dropped the C3, but we've added 193 angstroms difference imagery to the SDO to show a little additional depth in the corona there. And basically there are no plasma motions on the Earth side of the disk that appear to be associated with coronal mass ejections. Therefore, I don't think they're earthly directed. Therefore, let's move on because, well, we don't want the video to be too lengthy. So here are first filaments from Cerro Tololo, the lovely, lovely ground-based Cerro Tololo Hydrogen Alpha Telescope, part of the National Solar Observatory there in Cerro Tololo, Chile. Filaments, filaments, filaments. We got lots. And there are some prominences there rising over the eastern limb. You can see some in the southeast. There could be active regions down there. And like I said yesterday, you can expect to see sunspots at all active latitudes for the next about 20 months, really, because we're still about 10 months out from solar maximum. So anyway, lots of filaments. The sun continues to be a plasma miser. And before we get to bonus features, here come the latest data from the GOES 16. So some prominence is happening there around the northern polar region especially, and let's move into bonus features. So first, we'll move to satellite charging hazards. What do you got? What do you got? Well, that's what you got. You got nothing. No charging hazards there. So, and the orbits, by the way, of the GOES 16 and the GOES 18, they're in that bar there. Those are the geosynchronous near equatorial orbits. They wave back and forth in that range. And anyway. Continuing right along, GOES electron flux here is come up off the floor. We didn't see the dip that we expected last night because we were expecting a CME impact, but it never happened, so the electron flux was actually closer to NOAA's forecast. There's the one-year graph. There is NOAA's forecast, and it was actually a lot closer than we expected. So you can expect the next update here to likely be accurate, as well as there's no new space weather on the way. We'll also show the ionosphere map. But first, a lovely and convenient diagram of convenient distances in kilometers, chemical concentrations over there on the right, electromagnetic penetration in the center there, the way radiation penetrates into atmospheric layers, and then atmospheric layer temperatures on the left. Anyway, here's the ionosphere, the F layer, located at about 300 kilometers of altitude. The bridge between Earth and space. So that's what's shaking up there. Here's the anomalygram, anomaly in megahertz from a 30-day median. And not a lot of red on the map because no CME impact as forecast. So that one might have somehow just been mixed into the solar wind. It might have been deflected by magnetic fields. Who knows? But it didn't really show up in any measurable way in the solar wind data. So if there was a CME impact, it was undetectable. In other words, probably not. Anyway, here's the latest. 22:45 is the time. We'll also show the global ionosphere nowcast. The WHAM! The whole atmosphere model. Total electron content on the left. Maximum usable frequency on the right. I hope you liked it because it's now gone. As we're moving to total electron content by itself, feel free to pause the video on this frame if you're not familiar with those distances in miles. Your GPS satellite's located at the inner portion of the outer Van Allen belt at about 12,500 miles of altitude. So there's what's going on. These are the most likely places to see GPS errors, according to the coupled thermosphere, ionosphere, plasmasphere, electrodynamics forecast. We'll close out space weather with the latest high-res imagery of the closest star. So do we see any organized magnetic fields rising there in the southeast? Not so much. Do we see a new sunspot rising there just north of the equator? Well, not really. Let's check for sunspots in those same areas. So that new sunspot there, I think that shows a little bit of growth, but besides that, not a lot of changes happening. Things are pretty chill. And now it's time. Time to cast your soul into an ever-deepening and darkening abyss of flotsam, jetsam, and Jetsons. Used oil from Rosie's maintenance. You know, Rosie, their AI, Rosie, their AI maid. Anyway, if you're wondering what the coldest place in the world is, let's get to it. Right there, that's the coldest place in the world. Guess where it's located? Yeah, hit us up in the comments. Tell us where you think the coldest place in the world is right now. I'll tell you where it is. But first, leave a comment. Oh, your soul. Well, you get the idea about your soul. You want to avoid the river Styx, of course, so leave a comment. Tell us where you think the most cold part of the planet is. It's Greenland. It's about 66 degrees below zero in parts of Greenland right now. Actually, you know what? Siberia may have some colder places. What do we got? Siberia is often in the running. Nope. Greenland, way colder there at 66 degrees below zero approximately. Way colder than Antarctica. Keep in mind, it is summer in the southernmost continent. Did you know that Antarctica is also the world's largest desert? It's the highest and driest continent. Anyway, let's switch to our regularly scheduled meteorology. Here come wind patterns. Yeah, wind patterns. You gotta have them. Without them, you'd have stagnant air. And your entire household would smell like methane. And who wants that? Hopefully it would smell like methane and not meth cooking. Anyway, those are the surface winds of the eastern side of the planet. Those are the jet streams. Those are the jet streams of the central world. And those are the surface winds. These are the surface winds of your soul in purgatory. Wait, no. Those are the surface winds of the west, and these are the jet streams of the west. Here is clouds and fog over your soul. I mean, over the Americas, as it clouds up every night when the sun sets in Brazil. What a place. Shout out to Bruce. And here's the sort of low that's involved with weather patterns in the U.S. It looks like some lake effects weather there, as a bunch of west-southwesterly winds blow across Michigan, Lake Michigan, and the state, and Lake Huron too. Clouds and fog over the Great Lakes region. Next, snow forecast for the next 3 days. Brought to you by Windy.com, who does not endorse us in any possible way. So don't hold them responsible for the stuff I say. It's not their fault, but they do have a free mobile app. Anyway, there are the next 3 days of snow forecasted on the Euro model for Cali, and there is the GFS model. Euro model for next 3 days of new snow. The GFS model will show the whole shebang. There's the whole scenario. The GFS model, and there's the scenario on the Euro model. The next 3 days of snow. Next, our weather.gov map. If your location is lit, click your location at weather.gov. Those are too many counties for me to cover, but here come some forecasts. Starting out with pressure and precipitation. GFS 72-hour model for pressure and precipitation. Temperature anomaly. Ta-da and ta-dow. It's temperature anomaly in degrees Celsius, the same model of the GFS 72-hour. So there was a pretty cool thunderstorm over the Atlantic. It's kind of still going on there, although it looks like it is simmering down as it moves off toward Gibraltar, you jabroni. Next, lightningmaps.org. Yeah, lightningmaps.org. No, folks, don't use the rocks terminology. You will sound like a dick. Or worse yet, like a dildo. lightningmaps.org has got a real-time lightning map for you. And yeah, still some lightning there in the Atlantic, but overall not a lot of lightning on a planetary basis, at least not picked up by lightningmaps.org, only about 100 strikes per minute. Pretty average, I guess. By the way, if you enjoy the content, press the like button. Otherwise, your soul will be cast into an ever brightening and annoying abyss, which falls upward or something. That would be a hellscape, right? Imagine an abyss in which you fall upward. Imagine a plane of existence with no floor, where you're falling and you suck at life the entire time. That's what'll happen if you don't press like. What's that? You haven't pressed like yet? Why do you suck at life so hard? It's not that hard. You can also visit our links if you want to do stuff like, I don't know, support the channel. Maybe you prefer to see the videos continue to exist, remain publicly visible, and free for all to view. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. You could always visit the links at smashomash.com, press the share button, hit us up on social media, etc. Tell your friends and foes about us, lest our souls be cast into well, you get the idea. Anyway, here's a Doppler radar for the full 50-state view. Shout out to our viewers whose souls have been cast into an ever-deepening and darkening moat of alligator poop and panda urine. Here's clouds and fog over the lower 48, and here's water vapor over the lower 48, and here's a recap. That low there right over Chicago right now. That low right over Chicago. You'll see the rotation right here. And actually, I think it might even be north of there. Pretty tough to tell, but the water vapor map should clear things up, right? So there's clouds and fog, 3.9 micrometer infrared radiation. And here is the water vapor map. I stand corrected. That low is not over Chicago. It's over more like the Michigan-Indiana border, it looks like. So a little bit east of Chicago. Anyway, here's me signing off. Congratulations on realizing the channel exists. I'll see you soon. In the meantime, I'll have been your host, Dan, a.k.a. Smash-O-Mash, signing off. And may that solar wind be at your back. As I go back to the bunker again, I want to visit the Dirty Burger, but I'm too afraid to go in to meet Phil Collins. Tell Randy to save the mustard! More pizza, wench! Or it's a beating! A beating, I tell ya!